Welcome to Economics Happy Hour. My name's Matt,
And my name is Jadrian.
and we are excited to have you with us in mid-November. Jadrian, what's new and exciting? Semester's what, three-quarters of the way through?
We are in week 12 officially, which means we have 3 more weeks left, not counting Thanksgiving. It's exam week for us here at Virginia Tech. And then we got a nice little break. And then we're heading to the Southerns, which are in DC this year. So if you're going to the Southerns, I will be in DC. Please let me know. Happy to grab a beer with you.
Yeah, that's always a conference that sounds wonderful, and it's the timing. It's just not been one that I've really ever seriously considered trying to add.
It's
And quite
it's
frankly,
it's perfect for me.
I get yelled at for traveling enough anyway. So like I can't do everything. So trade-offs. That's
I've loved it because it is the week before Thanksgiving, and I've only been at places that get the entire week off for Thanksgiving. So it's this nice little trip right before I have a whole week to come back and deal with stuff. So I don't really feel like I'm not missing any
yeah,
class.
that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
I can make it up later if I do need to miss one.
So what beverage are you drinking today?
In your honor, I'm drinking a beverage. So I am logging in from work. So it's we got an econ club speaker tonight. Gonna get dinner with the econ club speaker. So I am on campus. Did not go home. So Matt, in honor of you, because really like hanging out with you, I am drinking one Diet Coke straight out
Hey,
of the vending
I,
machine. I
I like
normally
it.
drink Coke Zero, but I was like, you know what? I'm talking to Matt today. I'm gonna drink this one in his honor. So I got a Diet Coke.
I like it. I like it. I don't know that I might have had this one on air before. I can't recall. But given that you are not consuming alcohol, I picked maybe I'll have another one that will have alcohol, but I'm going to start with the Run Wild non-alcoholic IPA from Athletic Brewing Company.
I like that one a lot.
It's a pretty tasty beer. I like to say it is tastes like a below average IPA to me. But I like IPAs, and a below average IPA to me is still pretty good. So I, you know,
I support it.
yeah, I'm fond of it. In the Marzoni's mug, Marzoni's frosty mug. So,
You got to talk to
well,
your connects at Marzoni's, get them to make a non-alcoholic one. Cheers, Matt. A little
cheers,
digital
cheers.
clink.
Yep, the digital clink.
Still waiting to have that added to the podcast.
Yeah. Um, no, it'll be good. So in talking about what to do, we actually got a recommendation from Brian O'Rourke, who we had mentioned a couple names of folks on Twitter or on social media, and it's like I don't know these people. Y'all should do an episode on like who are the economists we might not know about and should consider following. I thought that was good, and I'm guessing we're going to actually we probably follow a lot of the same people, but then there will be some differences on who we might kind of recommend that our listeners follow for getting a little bit more of their daily or weekly economic dose. But Jadrian, I'll let you start off. Is there somebody you recommend?
Well, before I jump in, I want to make sure I say thank you, Brian, for this topic because Matt and I always need topics. So anytime somebody can
Yes.
give us a topic, it helps take weight off of our shoulders. But also, second, send us your topic ideas. We are happy to talk about just
Please.
about anything. So that's a reminder. So we're going to use Brian as an example. We do listen to your feedback. Um, there was one person who came to mind. So I've talked about I think there's economists that are worthy of attention, followers, praise all the time. But I do have two that I'll say, but I'll share one, and if we have time to do more than one, I'm happy to do it.
Sure.
The person who came to mind first was Craig Paulson from the University. Ooh, now that I'm on my spot, from Utah State, not the University of Utah. He's from Utah State University. Do you know Craig?
I don't know that if Craig, if I've met you, and I apologize, but it's not jumping out at me to.
So Craig is I would say one of the early econ people on social media, but like doing social media things. I know that sounds very weird. I'm probably not explaining it correctly. So econ Twitter is really big. There's not, as far as I know, there's not an econ Instagram. There's not really econ Facebook. Chris Clark is my second choice. So I might talk about Chris later. He's doing TikTok. But Craig was sort of the first person that I noticed that was doing a really good job of like teaching people economics on YouTube. And he
Hmm.
was making really cool, sort of engaging YouTube content that was not about like the technical side of econ. So he wasn't doing like ACDC econ, like how do you solve a market power question. He was like going out and creating YouTube style, viral video style videos about economics. So one of my absolute favorite ones that he did was he went to a movie theater and asked people how much they would need to be paid to not go see the movie they were going to go see, but instead to go see Cats. It is one of my I love this video.
That's that's fantastic.
So his YouTube channel is called Market Power. So yeah, he went. I guess there was. I'm trying to see if I can find it. Oh, paying Star Wars fans to go see Cats. So Star Wars Rise of Skywalker came out at the exact same time as Cats. And so he's doing sort of Mr. Beast style videos where he's going up to people and he's like, "Hey, you're gonna go see Star Wars? I'll pay you to go see Cats." Or I think he asked them like, "How much would you need to be paid?" And they'd be like, $40, and he'd say, "I'll give you $100 to go see Cats." And then actually like taking their tickets and giving them a ticket and talking about opportunity cost and all sorts of stuff. Really cool. He's got 57,000 subscribers. He needs way more because he's doing such cool stuff. But he also has videos about like why should you major in economics? What books should you read as an economist? What's the best thing about game theory? All sorts of really cool stuff. Love, big fan of Craig. Also a really generous guy with his time, his feedback, his energy. Love the man.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm glad you put him on my radar. I'm interested to check out some of his stuff. So that's good. Yeah, so when I was thinking through this, I was trying to think through who are some people that maybe our audience does know or doesn't know. And it's funny, the first person I've got is also, I think, better known in the podcast space, so not quite the YouTube space. But the person I'm going to throw out there that many of you may not have heard of, and some of you probably have, is Anthony Davies. He's a co-host of the Words and Numbers podcast with and Anthony, I got to know Anthony when we we wrote a report together about 5 years ago and went to actually the Pennsylvania House together. And he is I just think he's very, very logical at kind of explaining a lot of economic concepts in interesting ways. And the Words and Numbers podcast, I think, is also just it's a half an hour. It's interesting, maybe not as appropriate for kids, although they do bleep out the words that should be bleeped out. James Harrigan's the co-host, also a very good guy. I just enjoy the way they kind of break down issues. And I think they'll bring in some pretty big name guests from time to time and chit chat with them about economic issues. They actually had the libertarian candidate for president on there chatting
Mm.
through various economic and policy issues, and some they agree and some they don't, and all of those. And um, just interesting perspective on people who are, even though they're talking politics, I think they're in many ways reasonably nonpartisan in the way they go through things. So it's um and they're kind of disgusted with all politics. So it's you listen to it and you're okay with what you'll end up hearing. You shouldn't get too upset. If you get upset, don't worry, the other side's getting upset too. So that's always hopefully that's a bit.
I googled him and found a tweet which made me crack up. So I'm glad that you confirmed that based on the tweet that I just saw.
Yeah. Yeah. The so that but that's I think if Anthony's worth a follow on Twitter, and the Words and Numbers is worth a follow as well.
How do you decide? So for a podcast, so I mean we have good listeners who listen all the time, which I think if you have not realized, Matt and I really are truly appreciative. So we'll repeat that
Yeah,
over and
yeah,
over.
absolutely.
Matt,
Absolutely.
Matt, when it comes to a podcast, what are you looking for? Like, let's say you had time to squeeze in another podcast. There's I'm thinking, right, Words and Numbers. Maybe I can add this to my list of ones that I drive in on. You know,
Yeah.
I got some space. How do you decide what's your next podcast? Like, are you looking for the particular hosts? Are you looking for the topic? Like, what's your next podcast on your list if you had to add
Yeah,
one?
I probably don't have a good system, and that it's might actually not be good. That's the fact. The and my wife says I need to have more fun podcasts to listen to rather than, you know, a personal finance podcast that and um or somewhat of an econ podcast, or sometimes there'll be a few sports ones that I listen to. I've started listening to Acquired. I don't know if which is
Mm-mm.
Acquired is just fantastic. I I hope the hosts are engaging. I hope they can keep. I hope I enjoy listening to the hosts. If I don't like listening to the hosts, I'm kind of done with it. Right?
Right.
I can't do that. And are there things that they're saying that either I know, but they're phrasing them in new and different ways that are like, wow, I can't, you have explained that so incredibly well that I feel like I'm smarter because of the way you explain this thing that I know. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there's some economists who are so articulate that like I've taught this and I can't explain it as well as you just explained it. And then
I
you
mean,
try to copy, that's
yeah.
you
So
basically say, how can I borrow some of those phrasings and put it in the way that I would present to make myself a better educator? So something new. Sometimes it's fun. Actually, I'll listen to, a guilty pleasure podcast actually for me would be cruise radio. It's just, there'll
okay.
be cruise reviews. And okay, if I'm not going on a
Right.
cruise for a while, sometimes it's fun to hear about somebody talking about their cruise trip or whatever. But I don't have a good system.
Well,
What would be your system, I guess,
well,
then?
the reason I asked is I was scrolling through the Words and Numbers library, and they have episode number 380, population shrink. What are some of the concerns that a shrinking population? I'm sitting here going, Matt and I talked about this. We
I know
we
they
could
they
be
might
part of this
they might have been inspired by us. I don't know.
this inspired, or they maybe they've ripped us off and we just don't know it because we missed that episode. I so I ask because I know that I live in a bubble of news. I am not naive to think that I don't live in a bubble. I try to listen. Actually, let me back up. I should not say I try to listen to a lot of different viewpoints because, like, based on what I'm about to tell you, I'm clearly not. I like to have different news topics that are I'd like to hear different perspectives on the same sort of story. So for example, I really like the Daily. Like I listen to the New York Times The Daily every almost every morning.
Okay.
If it's a repeated subject, like I'm like I already listened to this. Remove this. I don't want to listen to this again. I don't need to listen to are tariffs good for the economy again. So I'll remove those, but man, I would love to have some sort of I want to say alternative news, but like an intelligent conversation about the same topics from a different perspective. So my go-to before the two sort of daily podcasts that I was listening to was the Daily
Mhm.
from the New York Times and Vox's Today Explained. I've really disliked Today Explained. I like it's gotten to the point where I've had to remove it from my podcast list because
Okay.
it was got I mean this might be an age thing. It was getting too cheesy's not the right word. Sort of jokey. Let's throw a funny noise in here. Like I didn't like it. There was something kind of weird about it.
Yeah.
They do have a new one called Explain It to Me, which I've really enjoyed. I listen to Planet
Hmm.
Money sometimes. I used to listen to The Indicator. I've stopped listening to it. Same idea. Like they started to do too many jokes, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that is annoying to me. Like if I'm trying to learn about the news, I don't want weird jokes and banging gongs and like it feels like a morning show.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I
Sure.
have space for a new one. That's why I'm curious.
Okay. I wish I had a good system for you,
Yeah.
but no.
I'd say the same. There was another one that came out a year or two ago called Everyday Economics, and I really enjoyed the first portion of that. It's by the Freakonomics Radio Network, so it's one of their. It's not the Freakonomics one, but it's a spinoff of that. Really loved it in the beginning. I have disliked a lot of the recent episodes, and so I keep looking at it going, why do I keep subscribing to this? Like I need to knock this out. So I'm pretty good about like if I'm not enjoying it, I do turn it off. I'm like I'm not going to listen to this. Let me go to the next one.
Sure. Sure.
But I would love something that just sort of presents interesting topics. And honestly, this words and numbers one looks really interesting.
Yeah.
Sort of
Give it a
presents
give it a
interesting
shot. Give it a
topics.
couple shots, and Yeah, it's a weekly, so I find that it's
I
good.
like a weekly because I don't drive every day, so I don't need podcasts every
Yeah.
day. Awesome. Okay.
So,
I will definitely let me write it down because otherwise if I was just looking at their website, so otherwise I won't add it. Um, do you have other people that you had on your list of who should we know that
well, so there's
maybe we
another
don't know?
one, another person that I'm guessing a lot of people here wouldn't listen to. And how I got to end up meeting this gentleman, we did a tour to Dow Jones headquarters.
Hmm.
Like this is Dow Jones Corp, not the trading floor, but like the
Hmm.
Wall Street Journal Barons. And part of the deal with this was they were going to bring out somebody to speak to the students. And they brought out somebody, and it's not that often I see this. You know, a few times I mentioned, I think might have mentioned on this podcast, but Susan Athey was one time I saw her speak
Yeah.
and I thought this could be one of the smartest people I've ever heard speak. Um, in terms of saying, just what was being said and how I kind of understood what she was saying. And she was talking about how she was doing something and explaining it in like so simple manner. And I'm like, that would have taken me months to figure out. And the but this guy was about the same. And it's Jack Howe, Hough from Barron's, and he does the Streetwise podcast for
Okay.
Barron's, and that's an again a weekly. And I just when I saw him and I saw him talking to our students, I thought the guy was absolutely brilliant. And I
Hmm.
find that as a fun weekly podcast that focuses on some aspect of business or analyzes some company, takes some listener questions, and it's just kind of an interesting way to get, I mean, we're in econ, not finance, but it's
Right.
the worlds are kind of close, and it's interesting to hear about the perspectives on the companies that, some of the very biggest companies in the world, and what are the CEOs doing to drive profits, or what does somebody think about, or what do some of the people think about particular industries and where they might be headed, and so it's just a entertaining. He's got a very good dry wit, and I find it entertaining as well. So Jack Howe was the second one I'm thinking through. I was trying to come up with who are some people that our listeners may have never heard of, or many of our
Hmm.
listeners might not have heard of, but
Hmm.
might be worth your time to check out. And so Jack Howe would be my second one.
Well,
And
I'm definitely glad I put Craig on there then. If that was our goal, because I feel like I'm gonna say not enough of our listeners know about Craig.
yeah, 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 I would clearly not enough of our hosts knew about
Of
Craig.
us.
So,
More proof that Matt and I do not talk about this
yep, yep.
before we start.
We come
Um,
on and no, but he looking forward to hearing some of that. So that's the second one. And, you kind of teased a second one
you
for you and one of friend of the show,
friend of
former
the
guest of the
show.
show.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. We've had him on the show, so right, like longtime listeners know Chris.
Yep.
People in the econ ed space, I feel like Chris is popular. But Chris Clark, I think, is a again just an incredibly kind economics professor that uh, is very giving of his time, feedback, input, very careful with what he does. And I like there's certain traits I feel like I have a third person that I could possibly mention, but I think is way more popular, especially in econ ed, or in econ. So, I'll pick Chris of just like I think there's certain people in econ ed that I find just really engaging to talk to. And it's almost always the kind, thoughtful, careful people. So Chris has econ Chris TikTok. He's the bearded TikTok economist. I
I
think
don't think there's a better way to describe him for those who.
the beard.
Yeah,
I
there are a few people who might think I know who you're talking about now, and
right.
who are listening to us if they're not
I
longtime listeners. So
I don't know. I mean, I to be fair, there's plenty of people. We've had this conversation before. There's plenty of people on TikTok who talk about economics. I don't know how many of them are economists, but Chris, I think Chris does a very good job. One of the things I like that he does, like, so if you're not on TikTok, it's perfectly okay. Chris is also on Twitter. He's on Threads. He posts on Instagram Reels. I think he used to post on YouTube, but I think he stopped because he said it doesn't really generate much. But one of the things I really like about him is he's very careful about like reading art. He reads articles, MBR papers. AER papers and will summarize those to answer questions. So people will post questions all the time of
Yep.
like, "Oh, don't you know about trickle down economics?" Like, and he is not. He's just not a mean person, and I don't know if you picked that up from him. He is a very sort of he'll listen to you in those pieces, and then he'll say, "Here's what the data shows." I think he does a really good job of not trying to speak for all economists, of actually saying, here are some papers, and oh yeah, here's some papers who disagree. And so I think he does a really good job of highlighting when
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
disagreements that are in there, but then also really careful summarizing articles, which I know how long it takes to make a TikTok. He's talked to me about it, and I've kind of seen him go through it. The fact that he is getting questions, reading articles, preparing slide or not slides, but
Yeah. Yeah.
clipping out data, and then also filming it. It's impressive that he's able to do as much as he does.
No, am talking to him. He mentioned, he kind of views this as a service. He's at a public university, and part of what he wants to do is educate the public in the way he knows how, and reaching people and through TikTok, and clearly amazingly successful. He just crossed 100,000 followers, I think he said,
On
on
yes, on TikTok
TikTok.
or yeah.
I believe that was it, on somewhere. So that was I saw a little graphic. So big congrats to Chris for that. And
Yes.
um, but no, I met him at the two jet sets, and he came on the one time, and generous with his time to come on ours. So
Hmm.
uh,
He's a good guy.
good guy, good guy. Next person who you may or may not have heard of is Melissa Kearney,
Yeah,
and I
Melissa.
believe
Okay.
University of Maryland, College
Hmm.
Park, I believe. She wrote a book. I think I might have mentioned the book. It's not exactly the most fun book to read, but I think it's actually an important book to read. It's The Two-Parent Privilege.
Yeah, I've had this on my list of stuff to read, and I haven't got to it yet.
So I did read it. I thought it was very good. It was
Hmm.
comment. I mean, I think a lot of it you hear about it, and she refutes a number of arguments that actually I had lent some credence to
Hmm.
before, and it's a good book. But she's pretty active as well on social media,
Yeah.
and um she takes she takes a fair amount of abuse on social media, I think, which is terrible. But um I think she's definitely worth a follow. Her book is definitely worth a read. And I know I've learned a lot, not just from the book, but by seeing her posting on social media.
No, I've had that book on my to read list. I think since it came out, or very close to when it came out. I don't have kids, but like, right, I obviously have opinions about these sort of things, and I think some of that comes from being a labor economist, being in an education space. This idea of what is going on with parents raising kids, the ability to raise kids, who can raise kids. I
Yeah.
have I have opinions that are not grounded in experience, and so it's been on my list of ones to read because I do want to see sort of data wise what's going on.
Yeah, so definitely worth a follow if that person's not on your list. And beforehand, I'll give you a sneak peek. We do very little prep, although I did tell Jadrian, I don't think we should. The title of this is not "Who are our favorite economists?" On here, because one, well, we don't want to make anybody sad. Like, why am I not your favorite? It's a little bit more of like, who are the folks you might not have heard of? Maybe not
Hmm.
entirely that, but I think that's kind of the route we're going. Based on, I thought, Brian's helpful suggestion. And like, I don't know these people. Maybe you could help point us to some people who we could follow and learn from outside of you. So do you have others on your list? I certainly have. I can talk more. I mean, as I'm a dean, right? We can. I know how to
You get
talk.
paid to talk, right? Oh no. So I was the other person I was thinking we've mentioned him before, and I think worth mentioning again is Jose Fernandez.
Yep.
Really, really great guy, and does just some like really incredible work. Just again, mentoring. That's gonna be huge for me, and I think it's now that I'm gonna call myself a mid-career economist. I think I'm 10 years in. I'm
I
starting
think
to
that's fair.
right. I think I'm starting to recognize that like I need to give back, and I'm starting to be more reflective of people who have given their time back to me. So Jose is the chair at the University of Louisville. And then he does a lot of stuff with one of the AEA committees, and I can't think off the top of my head, I can't think of the name of the committee. But he does a lot of like committee work for things, just helping the profession get better. And so he's just a really careful economist, thoughtful feedback, big fan of Jose.
Yeah.
So
And
lots
a
of great
listener
work,
of the show.
and a
Yeah.
listener of the show that helps. You know, Matt, well, maybe our answer is our favorite economists are the listeners of the show. So
That's the easy way to that's the easy answer here. Um,
I'll throw Jose in there at the very end. Jose is just a great economist who is really careful about what he does.
yeah, yeah. Keynote speaker at Jet in 2023, I believe.
Mhm.
And he did after he commented, he said how much he liked the show. I said, you got to be careful with comments like these, or you'll find yourself on here someday. And
This is maybe we shouldn't tell him we talked about him. And so if he hears this, he knows that this is an open invitation. We would like to talk to
yeah,
him about his
yeah,
work.
absolutely. We'd love to have him on, and maybe the next Jet or some other time we'll Zoom with him. So
You said you had another one on your list. Maybe we can go. Oh, I guess
well,
actually that was three each.
that was probably I was just going to give the name, because Brian, I think, and I don't think Brian's quite as much on maybe Twitter as we are. Um, but I think the name I'm not certain he knew about Brian Albrecht, who we've mentioned a couple
Hmm.
times before, and has been um, you know, incredibly helpful. Actually, he was incredibly helpful for us, our first Nobel Prize episode, because he went through
Yeah.
and did all of the cliff note digging up for us beforehand. So it made us recording super easy. But he's got a lot of great things. So he's mentioned him a few times, but some folks, if he's not at the largest school. And so definitely worth a follow on Twitter. So sorry, I'll throw
Hmm.
out a fourth one there. But yeah, yeah,
Four is okay.
we've mentioned plenty. Do you have a pop culture reference for the day?
Pop culture. I do not think I do. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to go through my head of what's going on.
I could go first while you
You
think.
go. You buy me some
So,
time.
well, yeah, the poster behind. Let's see here. Can I, if for those watching, go get the finger right? So it's I threw the Dear Evan Hansen poster up just to have a Broadway thing in the background, but uh, song on there so big, so small that I think talks about going through the process of divorce and the
Hmm.
splitting up of assets a little bit, and interesting on the. I think it's a good segue into like thinking through the economic costs of divorce, which are not small. And so, if you're interested in a very uplifting topic like the economics and divorce, that's one. I could throw a second one out there. I'll give a shout out to Ben Smith, who joined me on a Star Wars recording. We just talked about discrimination against droids in the Star Wars universe and a way to talk about, Gary Becker's taste for discrimination. And, there's times where there's several times throughout that series. I mean, we put in three clips, but there are more where there's just blatant discrimination. But it gives you an opportunity to talk about, well, if Mando is discriminating against having droids, what is the cost of this? And it's called the taste for discrimination, and that how would a labor market that's competitive try to correct for unequal pay for equal work, and a lot of different topics on that. So if I've got all the uplifting topics today. So it's discrimination and divorce for the
I think you've mentioned that droid discrimination
I might
episode
have. Yeah, yeah.
twice. I think that's their third time.
Third time. Okay. Well,
I think it might be.
I did the times before weren't with Mando, so
That's true.
I'll
Um,
take that one. And we did a video going through the clip and all of that. So
so I'm gonna go with what I'm teaching. I just taught it last week, so I'm gonna call it this week, even though it was last week. I did it on Friday. Just wrapped up my lesson on monopolistic competition. Technically also finished my lesson on oligopolies today because I teach oligopolies without the game theory in my principles course. I do game
okay.
theory later. I have like a 1 day what is an oligopoly sort of thing.
Cool.
But my favorite example, or my favorite pop culture clip, is a comedy scene that's posted on YouTube that I got years ago called the Deluxe Hugs. Have you seen this video?
No, no.
So, have you ever been to like a farmer's market where somebody's holding a sign that says like free hugs, like something like that? It's
I've seen the
usually,
free hug signs out.
yes.
Yeah, but
Yeah, it's something like that. So somebody's out there with a free hug sign, and there's a comedian who comes out who has a sign that says "Deluxe Hugs $2," and he stands right next to him and is like, "Deluxe Hugs, get your deluxe hugs. Mine are better. Mine last longer." Like, right, he's advertising and sort of stuff. And so he ends up making like $40 or something off of deluxe hugs. And so it's a good opportunity. I talked about price discrimination. Different people want different things. He actually even says it in the clip. He's like, different people want different things. Like, if you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. But one of the things I really like about this clip, it's a funny clip. I love it. But the other thing I really like about it is I actually have a T-shirt that I bought that says "Deluxe Hugs $2"
ah,
underneath it. So I wear it that day when I'm teaching, and every semester I have students who will pull out $2 and they go, "Dr. Wooten, I want a deluxe hug," and I go,
that's
"Absolutely, man, I will." So I give them
so.
a
How much
hug.
money did you make this year?
$6.
$6.
I
Nice.
ran out of time, right? I only got the 10 minutes before class.
Yeah.
So I give them a hug and I tell them how proud I am of them and that they're going to do really well on their exams. And I'm so happy that they're at Virginia Tech. I like talk to them while they're doing it. So I'm mirroring what's in the clip because he's like, it's 50% longer. I'll tell you that you're beautiful.
That's
It's one of my
fantastic.
favorite clips for product differentiation.
That's fantastic, and a little bit happier than the
Uh,
topics I brought up. So I
yeah,
like
yes,
it.
very.
I like
Well,
it.
and so this first semester or this semester was the first time, the first person who paid, I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll give you a hug. I don't care, like whatever. And then the whole room just clapped and cheered that he got a hug, and I was like, that's
Yeah,
fine.
that's pretty cool. That's very, very cool.
It was
So
a lot of fun.
that's a good. That is a good note to end on, I think. So if um if anybody wants a deluxe hug, you can find Jadrian in Washington at the Southerns.
At the Southerns,
Mm,
50% longer than the free hugs.
yep.
Doesn't smell like the hippie hugs.
Yeah,
There.
probably, $2 or an adult beverage somewhere, I think will be all it would take.
Well,
But
Matt, I did not drink my whole Diet Coke. I'm saving this for the Econ Club meeting. Otherwise, I'd be burping the entire episode.
I pretty much had everything. But cheers. Thank you to everybody for listening.
Cheers, Matt.